You're making a big mistake, officer. Big mistake.
What is the greatest twist in horror?
But what if the thing doesn't show itself?
What if it's hidden within another mystery?
That's crazy.
A mystery within a diner.
He's the most suspicious of the bunch.
Where we, along with everyone inside, will begin to doubt who is really human.
I could have sworn you had a mole on your chin.
Because someone in this diner doesn't belong.
And how do you account for 7 people?
So let's go to the Twilight Zone to find the truth and also ask the question, will the real Martian please stand up?
Makes one of us a liar, don't it?
The episode opens in a snowy forest where we hear a humming sound above the trees as it then crashes through those trees into a nearby pond, where we pick up with 2 state troopers that are investigating what happened, but so far all they've found are the broken treetops and the cracked ice where something has flown and landed underneath the ice of the pond. And both Trooper Bill Padgett and Trooper Dan Perry are not sure what landed in the pond, but what they know is with how cold it is, it's going to be stuck there until spring. And just assuming that it must have been a meteor, Trooper Bill figures that it's still best for him to
check in. That woman who phoned said something about calling out the National Guard.
So as he calls into dispatch to explain to him what they've found so far about the unidentified flying object, we see Trooper Dan making his way up the hill to get a better look at what happened. And it's here that he finds a set of footprints in the snow leading away from the pond. And as he relays this information to Bill, Bill is still talking to dispatch and begins to tell dispatch what they just found until he thinks about it for a moment and realizes how crazy it sounds. So with Bill being confused about what he was just told and dispatch being confused by not having enough information, he says that he's going to call him back, but dispatch reminds him that they need to go and check the bridge nearby because they have reports that it is covered in ice. So Bill tells him as soon as they're finished investigating whatever is going on here, that they'll go and inspect the bridge and block it off if need be to keep everyone safe. But first,
let's leave the car and follow these tracks.
Because from where they're standing, it looks like these footprints in the snow lead straight to the diner through the woods. And it's as they set off that way that they pass Serling, who then gives us some more information about what is going on in his opening narration.
A wintry February night, the present. Order of events, a phone call from a frightened woman notating the arrival of an unidentified flying object. Then the checkout you've just witnessed, with 2 state troopers verifying the event, but nothing more enlightening to add beyond evidence of some tracks leading across the highway to a diner. You've heard of trying to find a needle in a haystack. Well, stay with us now, and you'll be part of an investigating team whose mission is not to find the proverbial needle. No, their task is even harder. They've got to find a Martian in a diner.
And in just a moment, you'll search with them because you've just landed in the Twilight Zone.
Wait, I'm supposed to be talking about Nightmare at 30,000 feet. This is the wrong episode. What's the title of this video? Oh, I'm in PolterGibbst channel. Oh. I messed up. I messed up real bad. I'll go fix that.
Making it to the diner, we can see a bus is parked out front of the Highway Cafe as all of the passengers are sitting inside taking a short break from their trip. And it's just as the troopers step foot inside that Haley the bartender asks them,
Trouble?
But before Trooper Dan explains how the bridge up ahead on their path is currently unsafe, we can take this moment to see who all is here. Starting with this couple on the left, this is Peter and Rose Kramer, and sitting next to them at his own table is the bus driver, Olmsted. And the next couple sitting in the back is George and Connie Prince, and the man sitting a couple tables in front of them is the businessman Ross. Then another man sitting at the bar by himself, who everybody refers to as Grandpa, but his name is Avery, and behind the bar is of course Haley the bartender. And sitting at the far left at her own table is Ethel McConnell, and if we include the 2 troopers that just entered into the Highway Cafe, that means that we currently have 10 Earthlings and 1 Martian within this diner. The troopers choose to give them the news about the bridge up ahead first, and at hearing this, Olmsted, the bus driver, lets them know that the way that they came from is also now blocked by the storm, which means that they're all going to be stuck here at least until morning.
Till morning?
I've got to be in Boston at 9 a.m.
Olmsted quickly lets Ross know that the only way he's going to make it to Boston is if he starts walking now. And with the troopers agreeing with Olmsted, Ross becomes even more irritated about missing his meeting and gets up from his table to go and sit across from Olmsted, the whole time making comments about the bus line that Olmsted works for and just how great they are at keeping their schedules, and how little they must care about their customers. But Olmsted says exactly what we're all thinking, that it's not like the bus line controls the weather. And while Olmsted and Ross are having their back and forth, we see the troopers begin to scan the room to try to figure out who doesn't belong.
They were all on the bus, weren't they?
Which is a good place to start their investigation, as Bill then makes his way to talk to Olmsted to see if he has a list of who all was on the bus when they got there. But they don't keep a passenger manifest. All they do is help them into the bus and kindly drive them to their next destination.
We're that glad to have them, with or without names.
So instead, Trooper Dan then asks how many passengers he had, to which Olmsted quickly tells him 6. But the problem is, there are now 7 passengers here in the diner, even though Olmsted is certain that he only had 6 people on his bus, which must mean that somebody was already here when they arrived. But Haley then tells us that there hasn't been anybody in his diner since lunchtime, and he just assumed that everyone that came in at the same time must have gotten off of the bus. And that's because they did, and Olmsted even says there wasn't anybody in here when we arrived.
And how do you account for 7 people?
Confused and without an answer, Olmsted sits back down and declares that someone here did not come from his bus, as the entire diner grows quiet, giving a chance for Trooper Dan to ask everyone in the diner who didn't get off of the bus. But the only one to speak up is Ross, who says, "We all got off of the bus, and if y'all plan to keep up this interrogation, I want my lawyer here." And here is where Avery busts out laughing and chimes in about Ross's absurd statement that he just made, causing Ross to look at him and say, "I don't remember you getting off of the bus." But Avery throws that same accusation back at him, and that
Makes one of us a liar, don't it?
Avery and Olmsted have a good laugh at this as Ross starts in again, because to him it just doesn't seem to matter. It's here that we get this fun look from Avery, who has got to be my favorite character within the diner, as Haley then asks the troopers what is really going on. Trooper Bill and Dan begin to explain everything that they know up until this point, that they received a call about an unidentified flying object that seems to have landed over in Tracy's Pond, very close by to this diner. At hearing this, Haley just calls it all crazy. But Olmsted explains again that when he and his 6 passengers arrived, the diner was empty, which means that
One person here.
after this silence, everyone begins to speak up, from concerns about the situation that they find themselves in, to confusion about this new information that they just received, and even to flat-out denial, because surely someone would have seen this one extra person. But it's to that denial that Peter then reminds everybody that when they got off the bus, it was so dark and the storm was so bad, it would have been really easy for anyone to slip in with the group and make their way inside unnoticed. Trooper Bill is just as confused as we are about what all is going on here, because surely they would know who the other passengers were. They got on at the same stop. The problem is the storm was also going when they got onto the bus. And even Olmsted, being honest, tells them that he doesn't even remember who all got on. With all of this confusion, Avery rejoins the conversation, claiming that this is just one big science fiction story and that it's a lot like a regular Ray Bradbury. 6 humans and 1 monster from outer space. So of course, there's one person that he has to ask.
You wouldn't happen to have an eye in the back of your head, would you?
Ross clearly isn't having a good time with the inconvenience, and definitely doesn't like Avery. Ethel speaks up and asks the troopers what now and how are they going to go about solving this mystery. But Bill doesn't know, because it's not like they were trained for this or ever even considered the possibility of something like this happening. And it's a good thing that she spoke up, because she then offers them a suggestion that they need to start with the couples, since they would be the ones that know for a fact they both got on the bus together and would be able to vouch for one another. And it's as soon as she says this that Peter Kramer declares him and his wife Rose as two of the humans. And just after that, George Prince does the same thing for him and his wife Connie, but Connie's beginning to look at her husband really closely.
I could have sworn you had a mole on your chin.
Confused, George reassures her that he's never had a mole on his chin, and it's at this that Peter then stands up and tells everybody that they need to keep their calm, because if not, they're going to start analyzing everybody that is there and picking up on little bitty details to then try to prove that that person is the real intruder here. And his wife Rose agrees with him by saying that there's no reason for the couples, at least, to begin to doubt whether the husband is really the husband. But it's the look on her face that tells us that she doesn't fully believe what she is saying. And it's this look that causes Peter to get upset, as he tells her that after 23 years, there shouldn't be any more room for doubt, and that she can stop looking at him like he just put this face on as part of a costume. Avery again starts to laugh at all of the craziness that's going on, because she doesn't know who he is, he doesn't know who she is, none of them know who she is, talking about Ethel. But it's that lemon sucker sitting in front of him that is...
He's the most suspicious of the bunch.
Ross clearly still hates Avery and all of his jokes, and it's after this that the troopers tell Haley to go and make sure that the back door to this place is locked. But Haley tells them that if this person really is from outer space, it's not going to make any difference, because they'll just go through the wall. And while I'm not sure about that, it does make sense that a being that just landed a spaceship nearby is not going to have any issues with a locked door. And I'm also not sure about Avery's next outburst, as he tells the troopers they need to go and check under everyone's coats to see if they have wings. And while Olmsted thinks that this is funny, Trooper Dan is clearly irritated as he makes his way to Avery and demands his identification.
Left a gun in the pond in my spaceship.
Trooper Dan's had enough of Avery's antics and then asks him if he knows who won the World Series last year, to which Avery gives him the correct answer of the Pittsburgh Pirates beating the Yankees with all of the details about the games, and then tells him that they didn't think that the Martians would know anything about the great American pastime. And this joke finally lands with more than just Avery and Olmsted, as Ethel then begins to laugh, causing all of the attention to shift now to her, as Trooper Bill then makes his way to ask Ethel for her identification. The problem is she left it in her bag that was shipped ahead of her to Boston. So Bill's next question is just to ask who she is and what she does, to which we all find out that her name is Ethel McConnell and she is a professional dancer. So of course Avery has to speak up again and ask, how many legs? How many legs?
I'm gonna belt you, Grandpa.
Grandpa Avery is the best. This time, instead of laughing, Olmsted then vouches for Ethel, because she was the only one that he noticed getting on the bus. But he does laugh at Avery's next joke about who noticed him as the bus driver. But his laughter doesn't last long, as Avery then begins to explain that how do they know he is still the same bus driver that picked him up, as Avery then reminds everyone within the diner that not a single person has yet to be completely cleared. It's here that a still irritated Ross just tells everybody that they all need to present their IDs and they can be done with the whole ridiculous thing, even though Avery and Ethel have already been asked for their IDs and Ethel clearly doesn't have hers on her. Peter then speaks up and asks Ross how he explains all of the weirdness that is going on here and what is going on with this extra person. And Ross tells him that it's very simple. The bus driver is just mistaken on his count. It's never been 6. It's always been 7. Between the storm and the darkness that was there when they were loading, it's clear that Olmsted just missed somebody getting on his bus. And as he even admitted a second ago, the only person he even noticed was Ethel. But Olmsted reiterates that he knows it was 6 people because he did a head count just before they left to make sure that everyone that was supposed to be on the bus was on the bus. Not a person less and not a person more. Taking him at his word, Trooper Bill then turns back to Ethel to ask her some more questions, just as...
Miss.
And once everything has come back to normal again, the troopers tell everybody to stay right where they're at as they step outside to try to figure out what to do next. After some time has passed, the troopers are still outside and Olmsted is now sitting with Ethel as Haley then walks back in from the kitchen and Olmsted asks him that if it was him that did the whole thing with the jukebox. To which Haley's just like, I just work here. If there's something wrong with it, I'm gonna have to call an electrical engineer to come and check it out. And it's at this that Avery stands up like he's an electrical engineer and walks to the jukebox, making it look like he might work on it to fix it, as he then salutes it and says,
Take me to your leader. Take me to your leader.
It's just then that the troopers re-enter into the diner, basically ignore whatever Avery is doing, as they then tell everybody they went up to check the bridge, and according to them, it's really not that bad. And with the snow having finally stopped, that means that they're finally going to get to leave here pretty soon. Olmsted, however, has driven this route many times and already doesn't trust that old bridge. Ross, on the other hand, has a meeting in the morning that he needs to get to and reminds everybody that they can't really trust Olmsted's judgment to begin with, and that if the trooper said it's good to go, then they need to get a move on. And it's right in the middle of Olmsted's retort to being told how to drive his bus by this big shot businessman that the lights then go out again.
We may be losing power.
As everything returns back to normal, everyone becomes even more concerned because they just don't understand the point of these games that whoever or whatever is playing on them. To them, it's just weird and doesn't make much sense for this thing to keep them all trapped there. But the way that Trooper Dan sees it is that if there is something that landed in that pond nearby and made its way in here, they need to do everything that they can to figure out who it is before anyone leaves. Haley then proposes the idea that maybe this thing that came from the pond is invisible and just enjoys messing with everyone there. But the ever-pessimistic Ross thinks that this has got to be the dumbest thing that he's ever heard in his entire life. However, it's Peter that says it's as good of an explanation as any that he has heard up to this point.
But what if the thing doesn't show itself?
Avery tries to offer an answer, but then Ross cuts him off, causing Ethel to tell him to shut it, and as Peter stands up, the lights begin to fluctuate again, as well as the sugar containers on the table then explode. And at this, both of the troopers then pull their weapons from their holster, tell Avery to sit down and everybody to get quiet, just as the phone begins to ring. And as Trooper Bill answers it, he finds out that the bridge has been declared safe, which means that they can now officially leave at any time. Because it's with this news that the troopers realize there's now no reason to continue to hold them there.
You're making a big mistake, officer. Big mistake.
And they might be letting a monster go free, but the way they see it, they don't have any legal grounds over a suspicion that one of them might be a monster. So instead, they leave it up to Olmsted and tell him it's up to him for whenever he wants to leave. Still unsure, Olmsted asks them again if the bridge is really okay. Trooper Bill reassures him that it was the county engineer that he just talked to that came and checked the bridge and declared it to be safe. But just to be sure and to make Olmsted feel better, they're going to get their cruiser and ride ahead of them to be positive that everything is good to go. It's just before everybody has a chance to stand and make their way out that Haley reminds them they can pay up here at the counter, as he also wishes them safe travels and tells them to be sure to stop back by when they're out that way again.
It is all but one of you.
Finally, everyone gets up, they pay their bills, and they load up on the bus, and to Olmsted's count, there are in fact 7 people. And as Trooper Bill agrees with this count, we then have Avery remarking that by the time they make it to Boston, it's going to be at least 17. It's with that they all finally set off to their next stop and leave behind all of the weirdness that just happened within the Highway Cafe. But it doesn't end there, as we then see from outside of the cafe, Ross making his way back inside and first checking to see who is currently in there, which is just Haley at the counter. It's as Ross takes his seat that a clearly concerned Haley first takes his order for another cup of coffee. Haley figures that he must be mistaken and that Ross didn't get on the bus with the rest of them, but Ross reassures him that he did get on that bus. It was the bridge. The bridge was not safe, and it collapsed under the weight of the bus and the cruiser, with all of it falling down into the river.
It was a terrible scene. No one got out.
Except for Ross, who just chalks everything up to luck, but that doesn't make any sense to Haley, because if the bus was on the bridge and the bridge fell off into the river, why are his clothes not wet?
Wet. What's wet?
What do you mean, what's wet?
Ross doesn't even know the word, but what he does know is that all of it was just an illusion. Just like the music that is currently coming from the jukebox, or the phone that is now ringing on the wall, or even the lights when they were flickering earlier. All of it was just one big parlor trick, as well as the bridge appearing safe until the moment it collapsed as they were going over it.
What are you, some kind of magician?
Just as the thing that we have been calling Ross all this time reaches up with his third hand to light a cigarette.
Who, me? Oh, hardly.
As he then explains to Haley that, of course, his name isn't really Ross, and he never had plans to go to Boston, because instead he was sent from Mars to Earth to scout if this would be a good place for them to colonize. And from all that he has seen so far, he believes that his friends, who are already on their way, are going to like it there. So in the meantime, why don't they just kick back and listen to what the Earthlings call music and wait? It's here that there is a shift with Haley's posture and expression, as he tells him that he is completely fine with waiting because
We folks on Venus had the same idea.
But they had the idea several years ago to come to Earth and begin colonizing this very nice place. And it's this reason that Haley knows that Ross's friends are not coming, because they've already been intercepted. Haley then tells him that a colony will be there soon, and if Ross is still alive by the time they arrive, he will clearly see the differences between himself and them, as Haley then pulls off his hat and reveals to us his third eye. And it's as he begins laughing at the Martian sitting across from him that we get Serling's closing narration.
Incident on a small island, to be believed or disbelieved.
And if either a sour-faced man named Ross or a good-natured counterman named Haley shows up on your premises, you better make sure to hold their hands.
It's all three of them.
Or check the color of their eyes.
All three of them.
Because either of these gentlemen might just try to pull you into the Twilight Zone. And it's with that that we can finally answer the question of how good is this twist, by starting with the story. We know going in from the title, the opening scene, and even King Newsme's opening monologue that we are looking for a Martian. But we then spend the whole time doing just as Peter said and picking apart any little detail or flaw, trying to figure out exactly who here doesn't belong, leaving us in the same place as everybody in the diner and not knowing who we can really trust, to in the end be left with no solid answers and only a suspicion of who the monster is. Or if there's even a monster at all, because we never see the ship. All we do is hear something crashing through the woods at the beginning of the episode. After that, we're just left with what we're told by the troopers and the weirdness that happens with an extra person within the diner. It's the insistence of the troopers, the certainty of Olmsted, and the doubts of Connie and Rose that draw us into the mystery. A full story just like The Thing from Another World.
But what if the thing doesn't show itself?
But the thing does reveal itself as Ross. This, however, is a very small and very straightforward twist that it's hard to claim this as the twist of the episode when this is the point of the mystery. But luckily for us, it doesn't end there, because not only was there one alien here the whole time, there was two. The entire time, we, along with the troopers, are working with a limited amount of information against a being that is far more powerful than what we can even comprehend. And just like us, without knowing it, Ross is also up against a more powerful being than what he ever considered. It's because of this that the reveal and the twist of who Haley really is, that everything works very well with the story. So I have to give it a 95. And for our second category, we have acting and how well do these actors pull off the twist. And every single person within this diner did so good at playing the role that they were supposed to play. From Ross being this bigger-than-life businessman that is always in a hurry, to Avery just basically being the crazy guy on the bus. And of course, I love this line from Ross where he says,
"Wet. What's wet?"
Since this is the moment that he finally drops this businessman persona that he has put on, because he doesn't fully know everything that he needs to about Earth yet. But when we get to Haley's reveal, on the other hand, there's not as big of a shift in the difference of who he is, telling us that Haley has been here much longer and knows much better about how to fit in, allowing him to blend into society much easier and to never even be questioned about his identity throughout the entire episode, since he now knows how to fly under the radar. Once again, both of them do really well in this episode, as both being humans and aliens trying their hardest to go unnoticed here on Earth. And for their performances, I'm going to give them an 84. Our third category is predictability, and we want a good balance between being surprised that first time and being able to appreciate the little clues throughout it on the second, third, and fourth watch. Throughout the episode, everyone is trying to prove that who they say they are is really who they are. Except for Ross, who is never questioned in the whole episode. Think about it. The first question the troopers asked was to Olmsted about his bus and the passengers. Then Ethel suggests that they need to question the couples, to which we then hear their stories and even their doubts.
I could have sworn you had a mole on your chin.
After that, and after enough jokes, an irritated Trooper Dan then questions Avery about who won the World Series last year, to which he perfectly answers who won, leaving only Ethel and Ross to be questioned directly, but those questions only ever make it to Ethel, because it's just as Ethel is vouched for by Olmsted that the next question from Trooper Bill to her is interrupted by the jukebox. It's that event that ends all of the questions from the troopers, as they then head outside after that to go inspect the bridge. But it's each time that after the troopers return that when Ross speaks up or begins to argue with somebody or even just expresses his disdain at the entire situation before it goes too far and somebody has a chance to point a finger at him, that something weird begins to happen. It is only Avery, who Ross butts heads with the entire time, that ever questions if it's him. From first not remembering Ross being on the bus to asking him,
You wouldn't happen to have an eye in the back of your head, would you?
as well as telling the officers to check under everyone's coats for wings, but it still would have worked if they would have done that. At every single turn, Avery is the only one standing in Ross's way and is most likely the reason Ross doesn't even let him speak right before the phone call comes through. It's so well hidden that I completely missed it every time I've rewatched this episode. But the misdirection and illusions that were all caused by Ross happened at the perfect time every time. Then there's Haley, who the whole time just acts as though he doesn't really understand what's going on and laughs a bunch of it off. But then there's a line when the troopers ask him about the back door and if it's locked, to which he tells them that if this person is from outer space, it wouldn't matter if it was unlocked.
They'll just go through the wall anyway.
As well as when he was first questioned about hearing anything flying over his diner, instead of saying just a simple, yes, he did hear it, or no, he didn't, instead he asked the troopers,
Fly over here? From where?
the sky? Like, Haley, what do you mean here? Unless you did hear a ship fly over, and you just slipped up and were asking them what planet it was from. Understand, though, that all of those details are coming from a guy who spent 4 hours watching through the episode very clearly, not including the other 4 times that I watched it to prepare for this video. So of course I'm picking up on every single line and all the little details about Ross and Haley.
That's crazy.
And doing exactly what Peter warned against by looking for invisible things that might not really be there to justify who is or isn't an alien. With Ross being the Martian, that's more of the reveal of the mystery we're trying to solve. And the true twist being that Haley is also an alien does feel like it comes out of nowhere. So originally I was just going to give this a 66 out of 100 on the unpredictable side, but with all of my overanalyzing that you might agree with, I gotta bump it up to a 76. For the fourth category, we have satisfaction, which is how good and memorable is this twist for the audience. And I mean, everyone loves a good mystery, especially when it has to do with an alien hiding among a bunch of humans. And Haley's face here, when he finally pulls off his hat to show his third eye, is one of the most memorable moments in all of the Twilight Zone. And you better believe that I really wanted to go ahead and put it in the thumbnail, but I respect the spoilers and keeping a good twist until it's supposed to be revealed. So if you haven't seen this, you're welcome. And you need to go and watch the Twilight Zone. This is like the 6th episode I've covered. What are you doing? Sorry about that outburst, but I'm probably also upset with the fate of everyone that was within this diner earlier, and how Ross is the one that led them to their deaths. Because even Olmsted expressed his doubts about the bridge so many times throughout the episode, just for him to be right that it wasn't safe the whole time.
A terrible scene, no one got out.
But then there's Haley, who is the real one who comes out on top in the end. So not only do we get a cool reveal about who was really the Martian all along, but in a weird way, we also get our revenge for what just happened, allowing us to laugh along with Haley. It's memorable, it's satisfying, and it's an episode that I always recommend to people that are trying to get into the show. And so for all of that, I have to give it a 90. And for the final category, we have the Poltergeiger, which is the most important because it's my opinion. And I do like this episode a lot and would probably put it in my top 10 somewhere. but I don't know if it's because of how much time I spent watching this that I now understand it better, or if that was the point of the episode all along. But with the mystery and all the similarities to A Thing from Another World, this whole episode is a really good time. It just isn't quite on the same level as some of the other episodes in the series. So with everything that I've laid out, I'm going to give it an 85, bringing the total out to an 86 out of 100 and putting it in 5th place on our search for the greatest twist in all of horror. And while this episode about aliens coming to Earth just barely made it into the top 5, the next video might just have some aliens that are able to take home 1st place as we figure out what it means to serve man. So I hope to see you in the next one, and also, look, it came in. My silver play button is here, and it's so cool. It's up there on the wall. I hope you were able to see it, because it's awesome. And as many of you know, the last episode was the 100K special, and I also have the 100K Q&A on the 2nd channel that you can go and watch after this one. So I just thank all of y'all for watching this series and loving it so far, and as always, I have to thank the channel members. From Snarticus, Invictus Diamani, and Maxilin, to Night Logic, The Bonzo, and Ches Lemez, I seriously thank you all for being here and supporting me directly. And I thank all of y'all for watching this video all the way to the end, because you have no idea how much it helps when you make it to the end of the video. You're awesome. And I hope that if you ever find yourself in a diner in the middle of nowhere and some state troopers come walking in saying a UFO landed outside, that you will have some way to prove that who you are is really who you say you are. And with that, you can take one of my 2 hands, have an extra blessed day, and I'll see you in the next one.